Joe Carlin is suing his ex-wife Mary Stepp because she failed to honor their agreement to pay for half of their daughter's karate lessons.
Order, all rise. Order in the courtroom, please, all rise. Your Honor, this is case number 293 on the calendar in the matter of Carlin versus Stepp. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat.
Mr. Carlin, you and the defendant have been divorced for many years.
Yes, ma'am.
And according to your complaint, you shared custody for most of those years of your now 16-year-old daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And it sounded as if everything was going along reasonably well, right? Until you gave your consent while your daughter was with you to have her lip pierced.
Yes.
A decision which I gather, reading between the lines, you regret a little bit.
Slightly.
And as a result of that, Mr. Carlin, I get the sense you filed this lawsuit, which alleges that your former wife had agreed to pay for half of your daughter's karate lessons.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And she became rather expert in karate. She took karate for several years. Your former wife had not paid for half.
That's correct.
Something that I don't think bothered you too much until the lip piercing.
No, that's not correct, Your Honor.
Well, this whole thing didn't blow up until the lip piercing. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then something happened that, as far as I'm concerned, was tragic, but we'll get to that in a moment. So why don't you tell me when this agreement was made with your former wife?
About 3 years ago, Sarah was shopping around. She was interested in taking karate. So she looked at one school, and she looked at another one, and she liked the second one. It wasn't as expensive as the other one, and as a matter of fact, it was a little bit cheaper, but they wanted the money up front, basically over a 10-month to a year period. It came out to a little over $4,100. I talked to my wife, Teresa, and she said, we cannot afford this. I said that Sarah's mother would agree to split it with me. I picked up the phone, I called her, I laid this out to her, exactly how they wanted. I didn't expect the money right up front from her, but she said that she would split the cost of the school. 2.5 years later, 3 years later, I've yet to get a dime.
You remember having the conversation with him
No,
when your
Your
daughter
Honor.
started school?
No, Your Honor, I don't.
He says that he did discuss with you when she first started karate school, make sure you tell me the truth, that he wanted you to pay for half because he couldn't assume the entire burden of the classes. Now, are you telling me that he's lying?
Yes, I am, Your Honor. That's not true. I never saw one document from the karate school. He never approached me about paying half the money. We split tokens. He would pay tokens 1 week, I would pay tokens for school. The karate lesson money was never brought up.
Okay. Now, something happened with your daughter recently, I assume, when she came to you and said she wanted to have her lip pierced. Tell me about that conversation.
Well, for 2 years, she had wanted to get something pierced. She has about 3 holes in her ear, and I was like, no more, no more. And when she was 16, we had discussions. She asked and asked and asked, and finally I broke down.
Did you discuss it with her father?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
It really wouldn't have been a big deal.
All right. Mr. Carlin,
Yes, ma'am.
then you saw your daughter. I must tell you, I am sympathetic with you as a parent. You see your gorgeous daughter, and she's got this ridiculous thing in her face, and you got really angry.
That's correct.
So what did you do?
Well, Sarah and I had discussions prior to this that she was getting a little tired of the shared custody arrangement. So I picked her up and saw the stud, and I couldn't believe it. I took her down the next day to the place where she had it put in, and I let them know that she was only 16. I want this thing out now. And she refused to come in. So I took her back to her mother's house, and I said, you're tired of this shared custody arrangement? I said, I can't have this, either. And that was it. She's been with her mother since July 15th.
Mr. Carlin, you're going to answer me very honestly, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I think you've been a good father. I think you've been an involved father, good parent. Do you believe, Mr. Carlin, that your reaction to your daughter's piercing was appropriate?
At the time, yes.
Now, at the time, yes, because you're a human being and you have, you know, the juices started to flow. In retrospect.
No, I think I could have handled it a little bit differently, but like I said, you know, even Sarah agreed that she shouldn't have gotten this thing, and she even went down with me to the place where she got it pierced at to get it out. But when we got there, she made a stance that I'm not going to do it, Dad. And I said, well, then we just can't have this shared custody arrangement anymore.
Excuse me, Your Honor. She didn't want to go down to the piercing place. He made her go down, and when she wouldn't get it out, he dropped her off at the corner of my street and said, get out, in no uncertain terms. They had no discussion over the shared custody thing outlasting itself. The term was, get out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
As long as I pay the bills, I want to be able to look at you unencumbered by things coming out of your face and your ears.
And later today,
never get in the middle of two people who are getting a divorce.
They never got along. He can't stand her.
That's very understandable.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Joe Carlin says his ex-wife Mary Stepp agreed to pay for half of their daughter's karate lessons. Mary claims they never had such an agreement, and Joe is angry because she allowed their daughter to get her lip pierced.
A judge is not a computer. A judge is a human being, and we bring to our job all of our history, you know, all of our own personal stories. So I'm going to share one with you, all right? I have 5 kids, and they're all older now. When one of my children started college, and this was 14, 15 years ago, he came home from school after his first couple of months, and I picked him up at the bus station, which was pretty far away from our house. And he was coming home with a friend. And he got off the bus, and I looked at this handsome child, and he had something wangling from his ear. So I kissed him hello. And I said, you can get in the car. That thing stays outside. Oh, Mother, don't be ridiculous. You know, everybody's doing it. I said, listen, I don't have to look at it. I brought you into this world. I still pay the bills. As long as I pay the bills, I want to be able to look at you unencumbered by things coming out of your face and your ears. He thought I was kidding. I said, you got 5 minutes, boy. And he hung around, he spoke to his friend, and they were trying to figure out whether I was serious or not. 5 minutes passed, the thing wasn't out of his ear. I got in my car and I went home. And about 2.5 hours later, because it took that long by public transportation, you know where this was? This was in the Bronx, where he was in the Bronx, all the way up in the Bronx, where the bus came in from Albany, Bronx, New York. He managed to find his way home without the earring in his ear. Now, that doesn't mean when he was in college, he didn't have rings and ropes and dangles and doodads hanging out from every orifice of his body. But I didn't have to look at it. So you didn't do the right thing, you know. You're supposed to be a parent first and a friend second. And a parent says, babe, you got a couple more years until you are 18 years old. Then I can't tell you what to do, right? You want to paint polka dots on your face, you can paint polka dots on your face. But while you're in my house, I don't want to have to look at this thing here. I don't want to look at something in your tongue. I don't want to look at something in your nose. I just don't want to see it. He didn't do that. That really irritated him. Right, Mr. Carlin?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. So the problem is this. I find it difficult, Mr. Carlin, to imagine that 3 years have gone by with you taking no action whatsoever, even to get $100, $200, and have done nothing over the 3-year period of time to recoup any money if you say that there was this verbal agreement. I have a problem with that. So I'm going to take care of the lawsuit right now. I'm not satisfied that you have established to my satisfaction that there was this contract.
Your Honor, child support is more than just a check in the mail each week. There's
Sir, if that's
parental
what you're
support.
banking on, I'm telling you, it doesn't hold water. Karate lessons don't come under the category of necessaries for anybody. So I'm not, if that's what you're hanging your hat on, forget it. More importantly, Mr. Carlin, you have invested 16 years in your daughter. And I think it's a mistake to cut her off after 16 years because she, as a 16-year-old, made a foolish mistake. Big mistake, Mr. Carlin. I want you to rethink it. In any event, this lawsuit is dismissed. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Out the back door to your right, please.
I took care of her.
Not one
From a-
phone call
from an
since July 15th. Not one phone call. Nothing.
Sarah don't know how to use a phone.
Your duty's to call her at 7
Oh,
o'clock at
that's
night.
my duty.
Yeah, you're the
duty.
father. She's a child.
She's 16 years old.
Great, great.
She's 16 years old. She can make up her mind.
And now the next case.
Parties on Lehman versus Morris. Step forward, please.
22-year-old Kelly Lehman says she made a deal with her best friend April Morse to take over the payments on her truck and pay for repairs. She's suing because April's ex-husband, James, repossessed it.
It's not every case that has a moral. This case has a moral. You know what that is?
Yes.
You know what the moral is?
Don't do business with friends.
That's one, but the other one would be never get in the middle of two people who are getting a divorce. It's always a mistake, right? Ms. Lamont, according to your papers, the defendant was a friend of yours. She and her husband were divorcing. You the husband?
Yes.
And I'm sure in addition to other things, there was a truck that they wanted to sell, or that she wanted to sell. There were payments due and owing on the truck. You made an arrangement with her to take over the payments on the truck and to do substantial repairs that were on the truck.
Correct.
You paid the money for the repairs. You didn't have the truck in your possession at that
No,
time.
I did not.
The truck is in the shop,
Correct.
and you kept paying.
I made one payment
In August.
in August. Correct.
And according to these papers, for most of the month of August, the truck was still in the shop.
Yes.
And you're going to tell me why you did that in a minute. And then, in the divorce, according to your answer, he got possession of the truck, and he came and took it out of her driveway. Is that this case?
Well, it was parked on the street.
Or took it from the street? So you want to be paid back for all the repairs you did on the truck, for the payment that you made on the truck, and then there's something here about punitive damages, which is really nonsense.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
We started getting in a fight after her boyfriend said that he was attracted to me after we had gone out one night together.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Kelly Lehman says she made a deal with her best friend April Morse to take over the payments on her truck and pay for repairs. April and her ex-husband James say they repossessed the truck because Kelly made the payments late.
So let's hear about this deal.
Okay, well, April and I have been friends since the first day of high school. I needed a more dependable vehicle. She had it. I said, okay, we made this arrangement. At the time when the payment came due for the August payment, I didn't want to make it. I didn't have the truck. Why should I make it if I didn't own it?
Why do you think she should have made payment on the truck if the truck wasn't in her possession?
It was her agreement with me that she would make that first payment. And we thought that the body work that needed to be done would be done a lot sooner.
But it wasn't. Didn't it seem unfair to you that she had
It wasn't
made
my fault.
hundreds of...
It wasn't my fault that she agreed to make the payment.
But didn't it seem unfair to you? This is a friend of yours. Didn't it seem unfair to you that you had this truck that needed all kinds of repairs in order to make it drivable? Because there's stuff that was needed on the clutch and the bodywork and the muffler, things that she didn't know about at the beginning.
She knew about everything, and it was her choice.
The muffler was never told that it needed a new muffler.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Don't... Hey,
I was never told that the windshield was cracked. I was never told that the truck had actually been rolled and that there was more damage to it than that was apparently done to
well,
it.
the
truck wasn't rolled.
Gives you another good lesson.
Right.
You don't buy a pig in a poke. If you're going to start spending money on something, you take a look at it, even if you're dealing with a friend. So you made the August payment.
Late. She made it late when she promised to make it on time.
She made it late, but at the time that she made it, she still didn't have the vehicle in her possession.
That wasn't my fault, though. But she didn't have a problem with it.
Whose fault is it? It wasn't my fault, madam. The truck was in your possession, under your control when it was damaged. Wasn't under her control when it was damaged.
She didn't have a problem with making that payment until we got in a fight over her boyfriend.
How much did you spend on this truck altogether?
Oh, I've spent a total of $1,053.38.
$1,053.
And 38 cents.
38 cents. And that includes the bills that you have to show me for the repairs, as well as the 1 month's payment for August. You don't deny that she paid you this money?
I don't know what she's giving you.
Okay, show it to her.
At the time that the repairs were being done, I was told it would be a matter of days when I had given her the money, and it ended up taking like 2 weeks.
And that was not my fault. I kept mailing checks to the body shop, and they kept telling me they didn't receive them.
It's always somebody else's fault. You keep saying it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. It's not her fault. You, step up here, I have a question for you. What's your name?
James.
James, you went and took the truck off the street.
Yes.
Did you know she had made all these repair payments? Look at me, James. Don't look at the floor. Did you know she had made all the repairs?
Yeah.
Well, didn't you think it was wrong to go and take the truck?
No.
Why not?
She didn't do everything she said she was going to do.
You're talking about this September payment that you didn't make on time. You repossessed this truck from her September 12th.
By the law,
No,
you
not
have to have
September 12th.
insurance on the vehicle. She didn't have insurance on the vehicle.
Did you ever discuss it? I mean, you were friends. Is that right?
Jim was
They
not
were
even
friends.
involved.
Just a second. If you were friends with her, that means you knew each other. You had socialized in each other's homes. Your children played. Is that true?
Kind of.
They never got along. They never got along.
I
He
could
can't
understand
stand her.
that. That's very understandable.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Well, right now, she's out all this money, and you got the truck. And you were awarded the truck in the divorce, sir. Is
Yes.
that right?
That's right.
How many cars did your family have?
2.
2. You had the truck, and what kind of car did you have?
A Ford Escort?
Uh-huh. So you agreed between the two of you that you would keep the Escort and he would keep the truck. Is that correct?
But we also agreed that if she made the payments on time, as soon as our divorce was finalized, that we would sign and let her refinance the truck. But after we got in a fight, she didn't want to refinance. She said, I'm going to do what I want. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't take the vehicle from me. She refused to get insurance until it was in her name. Therefore, she's driving around a vehicle that we owe a lot of money on still. She did not make the, okay, granted, give her the first month. She did make payment on time. If you say she didn't have the vehicle, even though she agreed and it wasn't my fault, the second month, she came up with an excuse. I don't have the money. I can't make it till it's late. She breached our agreement first. And when he took the truck, he took it on his own. I had nothing to do with it. The
Ms.
payment was
Morris,
late.
right now there is something inequitable about you having a totally fixed truck and her having nothing but the bills.
No. We offered to make her payments. They wouldn't accept it. They wanted all the money up front.
She paid all of it up front, $1,053.38. Can I have the bills, please?
She didn't
make it in
I
payments?
don't agree with all of this.
Miss Morris, I don't care what you agree with. There is something
You asked
inequitable.
Me, you asked me.
Hey,
I'm telling you.
now I'm asking you to be quiet. You, sir, are driving around in a truck where she fixed the bodywork, she fixed the clutch, she fixed the muffler, she fixed the windshield, and you got
She
a
didn't
brick.
fix the
She didn't
windshield.
fix no windshield.
Strike windshield. And you're driving around in the truck. You should have taken care of this yourself. Judgment in this case is for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,053.38. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. I'll back to your right, please.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Parties on Peraza versus Barraza. Step forward, please.
Myra Peraza says she and her former best friend, Tina Barraza, won a new Jeep in a raffle, but Tina refuses to share it. Tina claims it was her ticket that won the Jeep, making her the sole winner.
Order. All rise. Quiet in the courtroom, please. Now, this is case number 301 on the calendar in the matter of Peraza versus Barraza. Parties have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated. Have a seat, ma'am. Ma'am.
You two gals are real good friends. You went to some sort of an event, which you're going to tell me about. one of the things that happened at that event was that there was a door prize of a brand new Jeep automobile, right?
Correct. Yes.
She won, you think that you should get half, right?
No, not exactly.
Well,
I think we both won.
you think you both won, and she claimed the prize.
Yeah, she ended up going behind the back and claiming the prize.
All right, let's start from the beginning. What kind of an event was this?
It was just an event from a radio station and Taco Bell. It was just a concert.
Slowly.
It was just a concert. It was just a concert where these rappers are going to be there or something like that.
You, according to your complaint, got the concert tickets and asked her if she wanted to go.
No, she got the concert tickets.
She got the tickets.
Yeah, and she asked me if I wanted to go.
Okay.
And I agreed, and we went, and at the door, they asked us if we wanted to gamble, and we said yes, and they gave us $500 fake dollars each.
Did you have to pay for that?
No. No, they just asked us at the front, if you wanted to gamble, you got $500. If you didn't, well, you didn't gamble.
So it was like Monopoly money.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
And after that, she asked me, I mean, I was there with her the whole time, but then she asked me if she could gamble my money, and I said, sure, go ahead, you know. And she's like,
you weren't gambling?
No, I was just standing right there, just helping her out. That was about it. She gambled, she got all my money, she gambled it away, and we ended up getting chips for, just chips, regular chips are what you gamble with, and when you were gambling, so we had to trade those in for tickets. And after that, some guys just came up to us and told us that, oh, they were leaving. They were in a rush, so they came over and they gave us their tickets. They said, here, girls, good luck, and if you guys win, give us a call.
So now you had these whole bunch of tickets, and you threw them in a pot.
We just, yeah. That was,
who held on to the stubs?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
yes, it was, she had it in my backpack, so she put it in the backpack. We had a backpack. It was only one, so she put them in there.
And you had a whole bunch of them. How many did you have?
There was probably 50 or probably more. I wouldn't know. We didn't count them. And we just threw them inside the backpack, and it was time for them to call out the tickets. The time came, so we went down there, and they started calling out tickets. We won other prizes. Prior to that, we won something else, and it was time to call out.
What else did you win?
We won a jacket and a backpack. And
what'd you do with that?
one of us kept the backpack, and the other one kept the jacket.
Is that right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I guess the time came to win the thing, and we just got the tickets, and she's like, here, you take half, because there were so many of them. We just split them up. She said, you take half, I'll take the other half. And
to look at the numbers as they were calling the numbers.
Yeah, so then after that, they called the number. That was about it. They called
And
it.
you had the ticket. You were holding that ticket.
Yeah, she was holding the ticket.
Okay. Now let me ask you this question. I'll ask you this question. There came a time when you did split up these tickets, right? She held half and you held half. Tell me about that moment.
As I recall, we just split them up.
Not we
evenly.
split them up. They're in your hands.
Okay, I split them up evenly.
Split them up evenly?
Yes, I just gave her half, and, we both looked at them.
Okay. Am I correct that your reason that was done was because it's too difficult to look at all the numbers as they're calling out the numbers, like in a bingo or something,
Yes.
so that each one of you was looking through half,
Correct.
right? And your ticket won.
Yeah, they were my tickets. They were all my tickets.
Now, why do you think they were all your tickets?
Because she had given me her $500. I did not ask her if I can play with her $500. She gave them to me. She gave the $500 to me.
How did that come about?
She said, here, take my money. You can gamble with it.
Is that what you said?
No.
No, that's not what happened.
That's exactly what happened.
No, we were gambling. She ended up, she was like down to her last $50, and she just said, can I, let me have your money. And she said, if we would win the Jeep, we would split it up.
I had said that from the guys' tickets. I had the guys' tickets in one hand, and I had my tickets in the other hand, the ones that I had won.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't. All the tickets were together in your backpack at one point. Oh, I think that they probably were. All the tickets were together in your backpack.
At one point, I had put them all together, yes.
Right. So at that point, they were all mixed together.
Yes.
Yours and the guys.
Yes.
Right. So there really is no way of knowing whether it was your ticket that won or the guy's ticket that won.
Exactly.
Well, now at least we got that straight. So it's not in one hand and then the other hand.
But I had told her, out of
their tickets that they gave us. Actually, they gave me the tickets. And I told her out of those tickets, if we win it, we'll split it because we were friends.
You couldn't tell whether it was their ticket that won.
No, we could not.
You just assumed it was comfortable for you to say it wasn't one of their tickets that won, it was my ticket that won.
I did not say that.
You had no way of knowing whether it was your ticket that won or one of the guys' tickets that won.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
Am I dealing? Hello?
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You speak to this pain in the neck, and a 12-year friendship is down the drain over a Jeep.
And later today,
he had stolen my daughter's clothes before. I also have sex letters where he signed up for sex calls. And I have pictures to prove what kind of person he is.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. 19-year-old Myra Barraza is suing her former best friend Tina Barraza after they won a new Jeep in a raffle.
I see that you have a tape there. Can you tell me what that tape is of?
This is just the day of the event, recorded us, where we both claimed the prize. We both did go up there and claim the prize. And
For the Jeep?
Yes.
I want to see it. Well, that certainly looks as if, at least at that moment, there was a mutuality that each of you won that prize. So what happened?
I was willing to split with her.
So?
And that's what we were going to do until about a month later. She had called me up, and she had said that she wanted to give it to me. She said, go ahead and have it, in other words.
Where was it?
I hadn't got it yet.
Did you do that?
No, I called her up. There was all this stuff was going on with the Jeep. We didn't know what we were going to do. It was a big old thing about it. We didn't know how we were going to split it up, who was going to pay for tax and license and everything. And we were going to get the confirmation letter. And I called her up and I told her, yes, you could stay with the Jeep. But she had said if she stood with the Jeep, she was going to give me an $8,000 loan. That's how much the car was worth, $16,000.
I did not state that.
And I told her, okay. She said she was going to tell her dad, sell her other car that she had just bought, sell it back, and instead of paying $15,000, she'll just tell her dad to get an $8,000 loan and pay me for it. And I said, okay. We agreed. I never thought anything. I just said, okay. It was just a verbal thing, but I did tell her, okay, you could keep the Jeep, and
that sounds reasonable because you can't split up the Jeep.
Yeah, and I just said, okay. And I said, you could pay my $8,000, or else we're just going to sell the Jeep, and we're both going to get our half.
No, she did not say that on the phone. She told me that she wanted me to keep the Jeep. That's what she told me.
What? Of course, that's what she said to you.
Yeah, but she did not specify that she wanted me to give her $8,000.
Well, why would she make you a gift of $8,000? If the Jeep is worth $16,000, why in the world do you think, madam, that she would make you a gift of $8,000, which is half of the Jeep? Why?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, let's go slowly. What word didn't you understand? Why do you think that she would make you a present of $8,000?
She did not say anything about $8,000. I did not hear anything about $8,000 on that telephone call. At that time, I was like happy. I was happy that she'd given it to me. And I figured that
what are you doing standing up here?
I want to step in for the spot where she told me through everything that happened. She called me every time they had a conversation. She was asking me, what should I do? What should I do? What do I do about the Jeep? Do I split it in half? Should I sell it? What? I told her, you know what? You won the tickets to that concert. It's your Jeep. You were holding the ticket at the time she won it.
Oh, you're the troublemaker. Sit down. Sit down.
As I was saying, I figured the reason why she said that on the telephone is because she knew that she did not have any part in the ticket winning.
Oh, please, madam. I want to tell you something. I think that your conduct was really outrageous to bring it to this point. First of all, the two of you have been friends. There isn't a question in my mind. What?
9 years. 12 years.
There isn't a question in my mind, after looking at that tape, that at the time that that Jeep was won, the two of you, both of you, I saw her signing papers.
We didn't sign any
Just
paper.
a second.
It was just a back of a flyer. We put down both our names and addresses.
Right. It was the back of a flyer. You both put down your names and addresses as the winners. Right?
Yes.
That's what it looked like to me on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime you speak to this pain in the neck who says to you, I don't think you have to split it with her at all because it was your ticket, it was in your hand. And a 12-year friendship is down the drain over a Jeep because there is no logical reason that I can think of, except if you're drinking too much, to think that this lady would call you up and say, I just want to give it to you because you're a very nice person. I care about you.
No.
Please.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today...
That's called the Soddy principle, S-O-D-D-I. Some other dude did it.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Myra Peraza and her former best friend, Tina Peraza, won a new Jeep in a raffle. But Myra says Tina is refusing to share.
Listen to me. Bottom line is, the maximum jurisdiction in this court is 5.
It all began on a quiet summer morning. The kind of morning where the air smelled of fresh-cut grass and children's laughter carried down the street. The neighborhood looked like something out of a postcard. Manicured lawns, symmetrical houses, and carefully trimmed hedges that all screamed perfect suburban life. But beneath that perfect facade, an undercurrent of tension ran like a hidden wire, waiting to spark. I had lived in that neighborhood for years, proud of my small home, proud of the little patch of land I maintained, and most importantly, proud of the flag that waved in front of my house. It wasn't just fabric on a pole. It was a reminder of my father's service, my grandfather's sacrifices, and a symbol of the country I believed in. It had been there for years, a quiet sentinel that caught the morning light and flapped proudly in the breeze. No one had ever complained, until the day the HOA decided to make an example out of me. The notice came tucked inside a crisp envelope, slipped neatly into my mailbox like an invitation to war. Bold letters across the top read violation of community guidelines. My eyes scanned the page, disbelief rising like fire in my chest. According to the HOA, my flagpole violated aesthetic standards. They claimed it disrupted the uniform appearance of the neighborhood and demanded that I remove it immediately. If I didn't, they warned, fines would begin piling up daily. It felt unreal. Neighbors had lawn ornaments shaped like flamingos, oversized mailboxes painted in neon colors, and elaborate garden gnomes that bordered on bizarre. Yet none of those seemed to offend the so-called aesthetic standards. No, it was my flag that had drawn their attention. It wasn't about uniformity. It was about control. I could already sense the unseen hand behind this decision. Our HOA president, a woman with a reputation for nitpicking every minor infraction, had long sought to exert authority over everyone in the community. Some called her a perfectionist, others called her a tyrant. To me, she was simply a bully who wore a smile in public and iron-fisted gloves behind the scenes. She had pushed neighbors to repaint their fences, remove wind chimes, and even replant entire gardens because they didn't fit her vision of perfection. And now she had decided my flag was her next target. At first, I thought about compliance. After all, a battle with the HOA was never easy. They had the paperwork, the bylaws, and the intimidation tactics on their side. But the more I considered it, the more it burned inside me. That flag wasn't just decoration. It was a statement of identity, history, and respect for those who had come before me. Removing it felt like erasing part of myself, and I refused to let that happen. So, I let the deadline pass. The flag continued to wave, tall and unyielding, and right on schedule the next letter arrived. This one wasn't polite. It demanded immediate compliance and announced that daily fines were now in effect. The HOA was serious. They wanted to break me with paperwork and penalties until I had no choice but to surrender. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't the type to surrender quietly. As the fines stacked up, I began to notice whispers around the neighborhood. Some neighbors gave me sympathetic glances. Others offered silent nods of encouragement. A few even stopped by to quietly express support, though none dared to speak too loudly in case the HOA caught wind. Fear had gripped the neighborhood, and many had grown accustomed to living under the iron grip of the board. People whispered about fines for small cracks in driveways, letters demanding blinds be a certain color, and threats of liens placed on homes over unpaid dues. Everyone knew the HOA had gone too far, but no one dared to stand up. Until now. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about a piece of cloth on a pole. This was about control, about freedom, and about whether ordinary homeowners had the right to push back against overreach. I knew that if I gave in, they'd only feel more empowered to keep tightening their grip. So, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted a fight, I was ready to give them one. And I wouldn't be fighting alone. The battle lines were drawn, though neither side fully understood how big the war was about to become. What started as a single flag on a quiet street was about to grow into something much larger. Something the HOA never anticipated. The HOA thought they could silence me with fines. What they didn't realize was that their attempt to erase my flag had lit a fire in me. A fire that was about to spread far beyond my yard. The first wave of fines arrived like clockwork. Every day, the HOA sent me a notice, neatly typed and stapled, with the amount growing like a tally of war debts. At first, it was a manageable sum, but within a week, the numbers had climbed into the hundreds. Within 2 weeks, the threat of thousands loomed over me. They weren't just trying to punish me. They were trying to bleed me dry, financially and emotionally, until I caved. But the more the fines piled up, the stronger my resolve grew. I could feel the HOA's pressure tightening like a vice, but I refused to be crushed. That flag still waved every morning, proud and untouchable, catching the dawn light as if to remind me why I stood firm. Each flap of fabric in the breeze felt like defiance, a signal to the neighborhood that I wouldn't bow down. The HOA, however, wasn't content to just send letters. They wanted spectacle. Soon, their actions became more aggressive. One morning, I noticed a board member lingering near my property, clipboard in hand, scribbling notes while glaring at the flag. The next day, another board member parked their car across the street, sitting inside as if they were monitoring a crime scene. They wanted me to feel watched, to feel like an outsider in my own home. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People began whispering again, this time louder. My neighbors started stopping me as I checked my mail or trimmed my hedges. Their words were hushed, but their eyes were filled with something I hadn't seen before: admiration. They told me they couldn't believe I was holding out against the HOA, that they wished they had the courage to do the same. Some even confessed their own horror stories, being fined for the wrong color curtains, being forced to remove planters, even being ordered to repaint their homes because the shades were deemed unapproved. It became clear that I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for everyone. The HOA board, meanwhile, began to escalate their tactics. After 2 weeks of fines, they sent a notice threatening legal action. If I didn't comply, they warned, they would place a lien on my property. That single word, lien, was designed to terrify any homeowner. It meant they could come after the very roof over my head, pushing me toward financial ruin if I dared to resist further. But instead of breaking me, their threats lit a fuse. I knew the law and I knew my rights. Federal legislation protected the right to display the American flag, overriding the petty bylaws of a neighborhood HOA. They might have thought they could intimidate me into submission, but legally, they didn't stand a chance. The problem was most people didn't know that, and that ignorance had allowed the HOA to terrorize the neighborhood unchecked. I decided it was time to bring the fight into the open. The first step was documentation. I collected every letter, every fine notice, every threat they sent. I photographed the flag daily, showing it stood tall and intact no matter what they claimed. I even started recording the board members who loitered near my property, building a record of their harassment. I wasn't going to let this be a war of whispers. I wanted a paper trail strong enough to expose them to anyone who cared to look. And people were beginning to look. A few neighbors grew bolder. One family down the street quietly hung a small flag in their yard. Another placed one in their window. Soon more followed. It started as a trickle, but every day more flags appeared, dotting the neighborhood like sparks of rebellion. The HOA had tried to silence one voice, but instead, they had awakened an entire community. Of course, the board didn't take this quietly. They doubled down. New letters circulated, warning the neighborhood about unauthorized displays. Meetings were called, rules were cited, and fines threatened. But by then, the tide had begun to turn. The more the board pushed, the more people resisted. What had once been a quiet street of compliance was transforming into something else. A battleground of principles. The HOA's polished image of control was cracking, and for the first time in years, people weren't afraid to show their defiance. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I walked down the street and saw what had become of my neighborhood. Dozens of flags now waved in front yards, windows, and porches. It was no longer just my battle. It was everyone's battle. And the HOA could no longer pretend it was only about one man's violation. They had picked a fight with the entire community. The tension became palpable. Neighbors who once avoided confrontation now stood taller. Board members who once strutted around with authority now looked cornered, scrambling to regain control. The HOA had always operated through intimidation, but intimidation only worked when people felt alone. Now, no one felt alone anymore. Still, I knew the fight wasn't over. The board wasn't going to back down quietly. Their pride was at stake, and pride could make people reckless. They were preparing for a larger move, something bigger than fines and warnings. And I could feel it coming. The battle lines had been drawn in earnest. What started with one flag had become a movement. The HOA had thought they could silence me, but instead, they had woken up the entire town. And as I watched the flags ripple across the neighborhood, I realized something important. This wasn't just about saving my own property anymore. It was about proving that when enough people stand together, even the most controlling forces can't hold them down. But deep down, I also knew the HOA wouldn't go down without a fight. Their next move would be decisive, and it wouldn't just be aimed at me. It would be aimed at everyone who had joined in. The real war was about to begin. The HOA had always thrived on fear. Their power didn't come from kindness or respect. It came from paperwork, intimidation, and the threat of financial ruin. But after the neighborhood began to rise up, the board realized their old tactics weren't working anymore. My flag had become more than fabric on a pole. It had become a rallying point, and that terrified them. So they escalated. Within days, a new set of emergency guidelines appeared in everyone's mailboxes. These rules weren't subtle. They banned all outdoor displays without prior approval, restricted decorative items, limited the number of plants in front yards, and even dictated the type of outdoor furniture residents could own. The guidelines stretched across pages, smothering every ounce of individuality. The message was clear. If the board couldn't silence me directly, they would punish the entire neighborhood into compliance. It worked for some. A handful of residents panicked. They tore down their flags, removed garden ornaments, and conformed to the new rules overnight. But for others, it had the opposite effect. What started as whispers of defiance now grew into loud conversations. People were angry. They were tired of being treated like tenants on land they owned, tired of being policed over trivialities while paying the HOA fees that funded their own harassment. The board had crossed a line. For the first time, homeowners began organizing among themselves. Small groups gathered in driveways and living rooms, speaking freely without fear. They compared notes, shared letters, and pieced together a picture that was worse than any of us realized. The HOA wasn't just fining people for flags or lawn ornaments. They had been quietly issuing fines for years, many of which had little legal standing, and using those funds to prop up their power. Some residents even suspected the board was mismanaging money, a suspicion that grew louder with every passing day. The more we uncovered, the angrier people became. What was once a silent frustration turned into a movement. The HOA thought they could clamp down on the neighborhood with their new rules, but instead, they gave us all a common enemy. And then, something unexpected happened. The story left the confines of our street. It started small, with a post on a local community forum. Someone had uploaded a photo of their violation notice alongside a picture of their tiny garden flag. The post exploded with responses. Strangers chimed in with their own HOA horror stories, sharing pictures of letters, fines, and absurd demands. Within hours, the thread had dozens of comments. By the next day, it had hundreds. Our neighborhood wasn't alone. All across town, and even beyond, people were fed up with the same kind of overreach. The HOA had unwittingly poked a sleeping giant. Soon, local news outlets picked up the story. They called it the flag fight. Reporters drove down our street, cameras flashing as they captured the rows of flags waving proudly in defiance. Neighbors who once feared retaliation now stood tall in front of the cameras, telling their stories, describing the harassment, exposing the intimidation. For the first time, the HOA wasn't the one controlling the narrative. Their polished image of protecting property values crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. The backlash grew louder. People who had never stepped foot in our neighborhood began driving by, honking their horns in support. Some left small flags on lawns or tied ribbons to mailboxes. It wasn't just a neighborhood issue anymore. It had become a symbol of resistance against petty authoritarianism everywhere. The board, however, didn't take kindly to the attention. They issued stern statements, claiming they were simply upholding community standards and ensuring fairness. But their words rang hollow. The more they spoke, the more they exposed themselves as rigid and uncompromising. Residents who had once supported them now questioned everything. Their authority, once ironclad, was cracking. Behind closed doors, though, they weren't backing down. More letters appeared. Threats of liens grew louder. Rumors spread that the board was considering lawsuits against those who spoke to the media. Fear tried to creep back in. But this time it didn't work. For every threat they made, more people joined the fight. We started organizing officially, forming a homeowners coalition dedicated to challenging the HOA. We pooled resources, consulted lawyers, and dug deeper into their records. What we found confirmed our suspicions. Questionable expenses, vague accounting, and decisions made without proper votes. The board had operated unchecked for too long, and their arrogance had blinded them to the storm they had unleashed. And at the center of it all was the flag. The simple act of refusing to take it down had grown into something none of us could have predicted. What the HOA saw as an eyesore, the community now saw as a banner of defiance. But the battle wasn't over. If anything, it was only intensifying. The HOA wasn't ready to give up their power, and we weren't ready to surrender our freedom. Each day brought new letters, new fines, and new threats. Each day also brought more support, more unity, and more resistance. It was a standoff, and neither side planned to blink. As I stood on my porch one evening, watching the sun dip below a sea of flags now waving across the neighborhood, I realized we had crossed a point of no return. This was no longer just a dispute between one man and a board. It was a rebellion, and it wasn't going away quietly. The HOA had wanted control. Instead, they had sparked a movement that was now too big to contain. But deep down, I knew the board wouldn't go down without a fight. Their pride, their power, and their reputation were on the line. And pride had a way of driving people to desperate measures. The real question wasn't whether they would strike back. It was how far they were willing to go. The HOA board had been humiliated in front of the neighborhood, embarrassed on local news, and mocked online. What started as a simple attempt to silence one homeowner had spiraled into something much bigger than they ever imagined. But instead of retreating, they decided to fight back with the one weapon they thought no one could resist: the law. Letters started arriving not just in my mailbox, but in the mailboxes of everyone who had dared to speak out. Thick envelopes with the names of law firms stamped across the top began appearing like ominous warnings. Inside were cease and desist notices, written in language meant to intimidate. The letters accused homeowners of defamation, damaging community reputation, and even inciting disorder. They threatened lawsuits, legal fees, and financial devastation for anyone who continued to oppose the board publicly. It was a clear attempt to scare people into silence. Some neighbors grew anxious, whispering fears about losing their homes or draining their savings in a legal battle. That was exactly what the board wanted, to split us apart, to fracture the solidarity we had built. But the strategy didn't work the way they hoped. Instead of panicking, our coalition doubled down. We pooled money together and hired a lawyer of our own, one who specialized in HOA abuse cases. He reviewed the documents, shook his head, and told us what we had all hoped to hear. The board's threats were hollow, their accusations were flimsy, and their legal footing was weak. They had relied for years on residents being too scared to challenge them in court. But with a competent lawyer on our side, we finally had the shield we needed. The board hadn't anticipated this. They thought they could intimidate us into submission, but instead, their letters galvanized the community even further. For the first time in years, residents weren't whispering about fear of liens or fines. They were openly talking about accountability, transparency, and even recalling the board altogether. And as our movement grew louder, city officials began to take notice. The local news reports had reached more than just the community. City council members were receiving calls, and the mayor's office had fielded questions about what was happening on our street. The HOA had always operated under the radar, wielding authority without much oversight, but now they were being dragged into the light. The council announced a review of the HOA's practices, and suddenly, the board found themselves facing scrutiny from outside forces. Still, they weren't finished. The board's next move was desperate. They filed an official lawsuit against me personally, claiming that my refusal to remove the flag was a violation of community bylaws and that my actions had caused irreparable harm to property values. They wanted an injunction, fines, and court approval to forcibly remove the flag if I didn't comply. It was a bold move and a reckless one. Our lawyer was ready. We built our case meticulously, gathering every letter, every video, every news clip, and every witness who had been harassed or fined unjustly. We highlighted the federal law that protected the right to display the American flag, a law that trumped the HOA's petty bylaws. And we prepared to show the court that this wasn't about one flag. It was about a pattern of abuse and overreach that had gone unchecked for too long. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about a piece of cloth on a pole. This was about control, about freedom, and about whether ordinary homeowners had the right to push back against overreach. I knew that if I gave in, they'd only feel more empowered to keep tightening their grip. So, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted a fight, I was ready to give them one. And I wouldn't be fighting alone. The battle lines were drawn, though neither side fully understood how big the war was about to become. What started as a single flag on a quiet street was about to grow into something much larger. Something the HOA never anticipated. The HOA thought they could silence me with fines. What they didn't realize was that their attempt to erase my flag had lit a fire in me. A fire that was about to spread far beyond my yard. The first wave of fines arrived like clockwork. Every day, the HOA sent me a notice, neatly typed and stapled, with the amount growing like a tally of war debts. At first, it was a manageable sum, but within a week, the numbers had climbed into the hundreds. Within 2 weeks, the threat of thousands loomed over me. They weren't just trying to punish me. They were trying to bleed me dry, financially and emotionally, until I caved. But the more the fines piled up, the stronger my resolve grew. I could feel the HOA's pressure tightening like a vice, but I refused to be crushed. That flag still waved every morning, proud and untouchable, catching the dawn light as if to remind me why I stood firm. Each flap of fabric in the breeze felt like defiance, a signal to the neighborhood that I wouldn't bow down. The HOA board, once so smug and untouchable, suddenly looked small and fragile. Their threats had been exposed as hollow, their power undermined by the very people they had tried to control. But even as we celebrated that small victory, I knew the fight wasn't over. Pride is a dangerous thing, and the board still held onto scraps of authority. They wouldn't accept defeat easily, and desperate people often make reckless decisions. The lawsuit had cracked their armor, but the battle for the soul of the neighborhood was still raging. The question wasn't whether we had the momentum, it was whether the board would choose to destroy itself completely in one last attempt to cling to power. And from the look in their eyes as they left the courtroom, I could tell they weren't done yet. The courthouse showdown had changed everything. The board that once carried itself with untouchable arrogance now walked the neighborhood like shadows of their former selves. Their lawsuit had crumbled, their authority had cracked, and the community's patience had run thin. But instead of accepting the inevitable, the board lashed out. It began almost immediately after the hearing. New violation notices poured into mailboxes, this time for the most trivial things imaginable. A car parked too close to a curb. A trash can left outside for an extra hour. A hedge trimmed slightly uneven. The board had declared war not just on me, but on the entire neighborhood that had dared to stand against them. It was transparent retaliation, plain for everyone to see. The board was desperate, and desperation made them reckless. Instead of intimidating people into compliance, their tactics had the opposite effect. Every new violation notice became another spark of outrage. Homeowners who had never joined the movement before now stood firmly against the board. People who had once kept quiet now voiced their anger openly. The neighborhood was no longer living under fear. It was living under fury. At night, small groups of residents gathered in living rooms and garages, planning their next steps. The idea that had once been whispered in passing now became the focus of every conversation. A recall election. For years, the board had gone unchallenged, coasting on voter apathy and silence. But now the silence was gone. People were ready to act. We learned the rules, the bylaws, and the procedures required to trigger a recall. We collected signatures one by one, walking door to door with clipboards in hand. The response was overwhelming. People were eager, no desperate, to sign. They wanted their voices back, their freedom back, their neighborhood back. And as signatures poured in, the board only grew more aggressive. They held emergency meetings behind closed doors, posting notices at the last possible moment to keep residents away. Rumors swirled about them hiring private security to monitor the streets. Some claimed the board was even considering raising HOA dues to cover their legal expenses, forcing residents to pay for the very lawsuits used against them. It was madness, and everyone could see it. The local media continued to cover the saga, dubbing it the Flag Rebellion. News vans became a regular sight on our street, capturing footage of the rows of flags still waving proudly in defiance. Reporters spoke to families who had been fined, to veterans who saw the fight as a matter of principle, and to neighbors who simply wanted to live without fear. The story spread beyond the town, picked up by regional outlets, then national ones. The HOA had tried to silence us, but instead, they had made us famous. Every interview, every news segment, every article made the board look smaller and smaller. Their authority was slipping away like sand through fingers. But still, they clung to what little power they had left. One morning, I woke to find a notice taped directly to my front door. It wasn't a violation notice this time. It was a threat. The board declared that if I didn't remove my flag within 48 hours, they would take action themselves. The words were vague, but the message was clear. They were willing to escalate beyond fines and lawsuits. It was the boldest move they had made yet, and also their most foolish. The neighborhood erupted. Dozens of homeowners showed up on my lawn that evening, bringing their own flags, planting them in the ground beside mine. What had once been one flag was now a sea of red, white, and blue, filling my yard, my driveway, even the sidewalk. People held candles, waving flags in the twilight, standing shoulder to shoulder in unity that IT wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. Cameras captured everything. Reporters broadcast the images across the state. The HOA had tried to isolate me, to make me the target of their wrath, but instead, they had created the most powerful display of defiance yet. And with every candle that flickered, with every flag that waved, Their grip on the neighborhood slipped further away. By the time the 48-hour deadline passed, the board was paralyzed. They didn't show up. They didn't remove the flag. They didn't dare. Their threats had become empty, and everyone knew it. The recall election was set in motion. Ballots were prepared, and the date was announced. For the first time in years, the residents had the chance to decide who held power, and the board could feel the walls closing in. But pride is a dangerous thing, and as the election drew near, whispers began to spread. Some claimed the board was planning to challenge the ballots, to declare the process invalid. Others said they were working behind the scenes to recruit allies, offering favors in exchange for loyalty. The board wasn't going to let go without one final fight. And that was the danger. The neighborhood had reached a boiling point. We had unity, momentum, and the law on our side. But the board still had desperation, and desperate people are unpredictable. The question wasn't whether the recall would succeed. The question was whether the board would try to tear the neighborhood apart before it did. As the election date loomed closer, I looked at the flag waving in my yard, the same flag that had started it all, and realized the fight was about to reach its climax. The board had tried intimidation. They had tried lawsuits. They had tried threats. Nothing had worked. Now, it was time for the people to decide once and for all who truly held the power. The day of the recall election arrived with the weight of history hanging over the neighborhood. For years, the HOA board had ruled unchecked, their word treated like law, their power unquestioned. But this time, they were the ones standing on trial, not in a courtroom, but in the court of the very people they had controlled for so long. From sunrise, the atmosphere was electric. Cars lined the streets as residents poured into the community center, ballots in hand, determination etched on their faces. It wasn't just a vote. It was a reckoning. The board had done everything possible to tilt the odds in their favor. They tried to cast doubt on the process, spreading rumors that the recall was illegitimate. They sent out glossy mailers at the last minute, filled with promises of stronger communities and preserving property values. They even whispered threats, subtle reminders that if they remained in power, those who opposed them might face consequences. But no amount of manipulation could hide the truth. The people had seen behind the curtain. They knew what the board really was, a small group of bullies clinging to control. Inside the community center, the air was tense. The board sat stiffly at a table, eyes darting nervously as residents filed past them to cast votes. Their expressions betrayed what they refused to say aloud: fear. For the first time, they weren't the ones holding the gavel. The power had shifted, and they could feel it slipping through their fingers. The hours dragged on. Ballots were cast, collected, and counted under the watchful eyes of both residents and media. Reporters milled about, documenting every moment. Cameras captured the determination in people's eyes, the whispered prayers, the nervous glances. This wasn't just about governance. It was about dignity, respect, and the right to live without fear in your own home. As the final votes were tallied, a hush fell over the room. The numbers were read aloud, each one striking like a drumbeat of justice. And then, the verdict was clear. The board had lost. Overwhelmingly, cheers erupted. Applause thundered through the hall, shaking the walls. Neighbors embraced one another, some with tears streaming down their faces. Years of frustration, intimidation, and silence had finally broken into freedom. The board members, pale and shaken, sat frozen as the crowd celebrated their defeat. Their reign was over. It wasn't just a loss. It was a dismantling of everything they thought made them untouchable. When the results were announced publicly, the story spread like wildfire. News stations broadcast the images of neighbors waving flags, celebrating in the streets, reclaiming their community. Social media buzzed with clips of the vote count, of jubilant residents cheering, of flags waving proudly on lawns. The flag rebellion had reached its triumphant end, and the board's downfall had become a national story. In the days that followed, the neighborhood transformed. The recall paved the way for new leadership, people chosen not out of fear or manipulation, but by the will of the community. Transparency replaced secrecy. Respect replaced intimidation. For the first time in years, residents felt like homeowners instead of hostages. The old board members disappeared quietly, retreating into the shadows they had once used to control others. Their names became symbols of arrogance and abuse, spoken only as warnings of what happens when power is left unchecked. They had tried to crush one man's flag, but in the process they had destroyed themselves. And through it all, my flag still waved. Every morning, I stepped outside and watched it flutter in the breeze. No longer a lone act of defiance, but a symbol of everything we had fought for. Neighbors stopped by often, pointing to it with pride, reminding all of us, that it was never just about one piece of cloth. It was about principle, about standing up when it mattered most, and about refusing to be silenced. The community that had once lived in fear now thrived in unity. Children rode their bikes down the street without parents worrying about violations. Families planted gardens, painted fences, and hung decorations without looking over their shoulders. Flags waved in dozens of yards, not as acts of rebellion anymore, but as celebrations of freedom. Looking back, it was astonishing how it all began. One letter, one demand, one attempt to erase a flag. The board had thought it would be a simple victory, another notch in their belt of control. They never imagined it would become their downfall. That's the thing about power. It only works as long as people believe in it. And once the illusion breaks, once people stand together, there's no force strong enough to hold them back. The HOA tried to fine me for my American flag. They thought they could silence me with intimidation, bury me in paperwork, and crush me under their authority. Instead, they awakened a movement that toppled their entire reign. In the end, the flag still stood, not just in my yard, but in the hearts of everyone who fought beside me. And as I looked out over a neighborhood finally free, I realized something important. Sometimes, the simplest acts of defiance carry the loudest echoes. The board had tried to erase a symbol. Instead, they became the symbol of everything that happens when arrogance meets resistance, when power collides with principle, and when a community decides enough is enough. The HOA thought they could silence me. They never expected the backlash.